A $12 padlock tried to erase 30 years of footsteps. It didn't know I kept my proof in ink, iron, and an old man's memory of where the fence posts go. The morning I found the lock, the alley smelled like warm dust and the neighbor's dryer. Sheets. My daughter's backpack thumped against my knee. My mother was 5 careful steps behind with her cane, and the sun was just cresting the garages when the light hit it. A new brass padlock shining like a grin where my gate latch should have been. A length of chain looped through the slats and around the post, tight enough to sing if you plucked it. "Dad," Mia said, "why is our fence wearing jewelry?" A laminated tag fluttered from the chain. HOA Access Only, it read, the kind of official that comes from a home printer and confidence. I felt heat climb up my neck. "Hold on," I told Mia, and then softer. "Ma, sit for a second." There's a bench by the hibiscus, shaded this time of day. She lowered herself with a breath that had 2 parts, pain and pride. The alley is our daily artery. The carport opens there, not on the steep front hill that a city engineer once called charming grade and my mother calls trouble. We've used that gate since before Mia was born. My father and I rehung it the week we moved in. Cedar planks, black strap hinges, a hand-smoothed latch that never snags. My father had tapped the fence post when we were done, knuckles against wood. "This line was here before us," he said, smiling. "We keep it honest." I pulled at the chain anyway because some part of you bargains even when you know the deal is bad. The padlock didn't budge. I checked my phone. An email sat. In the HOA folder from the night before, security update, alley gate closures. I'd skimmed it while washing dishes, filing it with raccoons and porch pirates in the category of things that happen to other people. Effective immediately, it read, locks will be installed on all common gates to prevent non-resident access. Residents should use front entrances, as if every front entrance were equal, as if a slope weren't a wall when your knees sound like crumpled paper. I dialed the management number, thumb already rehearsing patience. "Sunset Community Management," a man chirped. "This is Dale." "Someone locked my only alley gate," I said. "I have a carport in the back. My mother can't do our front steps." "So sorry for the inconvenience," he said, in a tone that trademarked the word. "The board approved this measure. Common area access points will be controlled for safety." "This gate is on my fence," I said. "It's the only way to my parking. And there's an easement, ingress and egress along the west boundary. It's in the plat." "If you have documentation," Dale said, "feel free to email it to info@Dale," I said, and heard my father in my voice, patient as a level. "I'll send it, but right now I have a 3rd grader late for school and a 71-year-old who doesn't do hills." Silence. Then, "I'm not authorized to remove locks, sir." We went the long way. I made a backpack sling out of my arm for Mia and a railing out of my body for my mother. By the time we reached the street, my mother's breath had a tremor in it. She waved me off with that tired, teasing glare she saves for pity. "Go," she said. "The car won't drive itself." I left them on the porch like a promise I meant to keep better. On the way back, I stopped at the hardware store for nothing in particular and bought a coil of neon mason line anyway. At home, I set my closing folder on the kitchen table like, "You lay out instruments before surgery, deed, title policy, the recorded plat for Willow View Phase 3. My survey with its pencil smudged the shape of Texas. Halfway down the legend, there it was, a 6-foot-wide easement for ingress and egress running along the west boundary of Lot 27. My lot. A skinny river of rights that had carried us to the alley for decades. The ground remembers. My father used to say it when he'd kneel to find a corner pin by feel, palm reading earth like Braille. I grabbed a hand trowel and the string and went to the back fence. Past the hibiscus, past the place the dog used to dig under, I found it. A capped iron rod, cool and certain beneath the soil, exactly where the survey said it should be. I tied the neon string to it, stretched it along the fence line, and watched. The gate sit plumb on the bright line like a fact. Mia came out still in her socks. "Are we building something?" she asked. "Maybe," I said. "Something you can't see, but that holds up everything you can." That night, after dishes and homework and my mother's crossword, 5 letters means stubborn, I Googled surveyors and copied 3 numbers. In the morning, I'd call the one with the patient voice. I'd ask him to bring his tripod and his tapes and to tell me where the world said my line was. Let the board have its laminate tags. I had iron in. The ground and words in a book that outlived locks. Ana Del Rio arrived 10 minutes early in a white pickup with a magnetic logo that said simply, Del Rio Land Surveying, PLS 7842. She moved like someone who trusted the ground, quietly, with attention. The tailgate dropped, and out came an orange tripod, a yellow total station, a prism rod, a canvas bag that clinked with caps and nails. The alley was just waking up. A garage door groaned open somewhere. A dog announced itself. The smell of someone's toast drifted on the heat that would be noon. "You must be Daniel," she said, offering a hand that felt like it could pound. A stake and sign a letter with equal steadiness. "Show me your paper." At the kitchen table, I spread the deed, the recorded plat for Willowview Phase 3, my boundary survey from 10 years ago. She held each page like a photograph of someone she used to know. "There it is," she said, tapping the legend with a short, clean nail. 6-foot ingress-egress easement along west boundary of Lot 27. Appurtenant to your lot, burdening the association's tract where it meets the alley. Means you get to pass through here, on foot or by car. An HOA can't obstruct an easement. "They're subject to—" "I'm not a lawyer," she added, "but lines have meanings." I felt a small, grateful fizz in my chest. It didn't fix the lock, but it said I wasn't crazy. We stepped into the yard. My mother watched from the shade, a mug of tea warming her fingers. Mia stuck to the sliding door, face pressed to glass, hair in the half ponytail I never get. Quite right? Anna crossed to the back corner, knelt, and brushed the soil with the flat of her palm like she was greeting a sleeping cat. "Hello, old friend," she said, and uncovered the capped iron pin. She clipped a tape to it, then popped open the tripod legs with 3 quick clicks that sounded like decision. The total station set atop it with a satisfying twist. She sighted down the fence line, called bearings like prayer. Back sight N 0 degree 1520, E distance 120 zeros. Good. The prism rod in my hands made me her assistant, a job I loved instantly. "Hold it level," she said, and the bubble's green eye told me when I did. The instrument beeped softly with each shot, a polite affirmation. She marked points with blue paint and thin lath, flagging them with pink ribbon that trembled even when the air didn't. "Your fence is dead on your line," she said. "Gate too. The lock is on your wood." She pointed to the chain looped through the slats, then around a metal post just beyond. "They tied off on that post in the alley, the associations, but the chain crosses your boundary. More importantly, the chain obstructs your recorded right-of-way. That's the bigger issue." As if on cue, a golf cart hummed into the alley and stopped with the exhale of a small animal. Dale from management sat behind the wheel, a clipboard on his lap. Beside him rode a man I'd only ever seen in newsletters, a board member named Scott, deep tan, arms crossed like punctuation. "Morning," Dale called with the cheer of someone attempting to reopen a closed door. "We've had some calls about activity." "I hired a surveyor," I said, "to locate my boundary and the recorded easement." Scott looked at the tripod as if it were a provocation, which, in the best sense, it was. "We locked common. Gates for security," he said. "Front access is available to all residents." "My mother can't manage our front steps," I said. "My carport is back here. Also," I gestured to Anna, who had the gentle smile of a professional about to translate. "There's a recorded easement." Anna kept her voice even. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to locate what's recorded. The 6-foot ingress, egress. Easement rides this boundary and terminates at your alley. Right now, a chain crosses the easement and prevents its use. I'll file a sketch with my stamp by day's end. If you'd like a copy, I can email the PDF. Dale nodded without nodding. Scott cleared his throat. "The board has counsel." "Good," I said. "So do I, if we need to." The words surprised me in my own mouth. They felt less like a threat than a refusal to be small. Anna finished her shots and scribbled notes in a field book that looked like it had been rained on and dried by 5 different suns. She set 2 rebar stakes flush with the soil at either side of the gate and capped them with yellow plastic, LS 7842, then snapped the neon string between them the way a teacher snaps a chalk line. It sang a faint, bright note. She measured the 6 feet of the easement into my yard and marked that too, painting a thin blue border only we would see unless we needed others to. "By dinner," she said, "you'll have a stamped exhibit that shows the gate in the easement and the obstruction. If they don't cut the lock, you'll attach it to a demand letter. If they still don't, you'll attach it to a petition." She glanced at my mother. "This is what these lines are for," she added gently. Back inside, Anna thumbed through her data collector, then emailed me a draft. Exhibit A, Ingress, Egress Easement, Lot 27, Willow View Phase 3. The thing I felt holding my breath let it out. After she left, Mia tugged my hand. "Did we win?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "But we found the map." I scanned the exhibit, attached the plat and my deed, and typed a subject line to Dale and the board that felt like knocking on a door with both knuckles. Notice of obstruction of recorded easement. Demand to remove padlock. I CC'd the email to an address I'd looked up the night before, a lawyer with a voice like a ruler laid on a desk. Then I walked to the gate and touched the chain that had tried to make us small. It didn't sing when I plucked it this time. It just made a dull sound like a thing that knew it was out of tune. By noon, the alley felt like a hallway to a locked room you own. Sun pinned hard shadows along the fence. The chain blinked in the light with that smug brass smile, and the laminated tag still fluttered like a scolding finger. My email had gone out. Notice of obstruction, survey exhibit attached, instrument numbers bolded like scripture. Now I waited for paper to speak back. Mia padded into the kitchen in her socks, slid a drawing across the table. "I made the gate," she said. Blue crayon for sky, a square of brown for cedar, stick figures on both sides, a neon line scribbled like lightning across the bottom. "That's the string," she added. I put the drawing under a magnet, right next to the school calendar and a grocery list that suddenly felt like a poem from a different life. My phone chimed. "Dale, we reviewed your email. The board is willing to provide you with a key to the alley gate upon a $50 deposit. For safety, gates must remain locked." 2 minutes later, another chime, this one from an address with a law firm domain. "Ms. Rourke, Association Counsel. Your easement is subject to reasonable restrictions for community security. A key eliminates any inconvenience. Please refrain from removing or tampering with association locks." I read the sentences aloud and felt my jaw remember my father's stubborn set. "Restrictions," I said to no one. "Don't swallow rights." My mother, at the table with her tea, tilted her head. "You going to let them hand you a key to your own feet?" she asked. Her cane lay across her lap like a quiet argument. Called the lawyer I'd CC'd, Priya Chen, and heard the calm of a metronome in her hello. I summarized, then read the emails. She listened the way good people do when you're telling them your spine. 2 lanes, she said when I stopped. 1, the easement. If the recorded document grants ingress and egress along your west boundary to the alley, the association can't unilaterally obstruct it. A lock that requires permission to use is an obstruction unless it's neutral, managed, and actually provides equal access. 2. Your mother. The Fair Housing Act requires reasonable accommodations for disabilities. Forcing a mobility-impaired resident to use a steep front entry when a direct path exists is a classic accommodation issue. We'll ask for removal. If they insist on a lock, we'll require it to open without keys, like a panic bar or self-closing gate, and we'll require them to restore immediate access while we sort it out. My mother hates the word disability, I said. She calls it the price of a good life. Call it the law working for you for once, Priya said. Send me Anna's stamped exhibit, your deed, the plat. I'll draft a demand and a reasonable accommodation request. If they don't unlock by 5, we'll file for a temporary restraining order tomorrow morning. After I hung up, I found my mother at the sliding door, fingers on the glass. You're getting a lawyer? She asked, like she was asking if I was getting a winter coat. Yes, I said. For us. For the line. She nodded and patted my cheek with the same hand that used to steer my bicycle seat. Good, she said. We're not the kind of people who let a lock teach us how small we are. The alley buzzed in the heavy afternoon. A UPS truck idled at the corner and then gave up, its driver trundling boxes up the steep front street like pennants. Mrs. Alvarez from 2 houses down rolled by on her scooter and stopped at my fence. They locked yours too? She asked. I can't do the hill anymore. My son is furious. She laughed once, a bark at the absurdity of bodies. Tell me where to sign. I printed a 1-page neighbor letter. Clear, plain, just the facts. Recorded easement, obstructed, mother can't. Managed steps, request for restoration, and went door to door the way news used to travel. People opened. People signed. People said, they can't just, and I didn't realize, and of course. Even Scott's wife, who had a softness around her eyes that suggested she was tired of every fight pretending to be a principal, took the paper and said, I'll talk to him. At 2:40, Anna's stamped exhibit hit my inbox with the subject line, Easement Obstruction, Lot 27. It had the kind of quiet authority that doesn't need to raise its voice. I printed 3 copies, slid one into a plastic sleeve, and zip-tied it to the fence beside the chain. A funny thing happens when you attach a map to a locked gate. The fence looks more like a book, and the lock more like a typo. At 3:30, Priya's demand went out. Cease obstructing the recorded ingress-egress easement by 5 p.m. Remove the lock. Confirm in writing. As an alternative, propose an immediately workable accommodation that restores unfettered access. Failure will result in filing for a TRO. She attached the plat, the easement language, Anna's exhibit, even a photo of my mother's cane leaning next to the gate like a witness. 4 came and went. 5 put on its shoes. My phone stayed quiet in the way a storm sometimes is when it has decided which house to ring out. At 5:30, an email pinged from Dale. The board will provide keys to affected residents tomorrow morning. And from Ms. Rourke. The association will not remove security measures. I stood in the alley, the light going gold in that forgiving way it does, and touched the chain. Okay, I said to the brass grin. See you in court. Mia tugged my sleeve. Dad, she whispered, conspiratorial. When we win, can we paint the gate blue? I looked at her drawing on the fridge in my mind. We'll paint it the color of open, I said. Courthouse air always smells like toner and nerves. Priya met me at the metal detector with a file box and a calm that felt like a hand on my shoulder. Affidavits signed? She asked. I nodded. Mine said the things you'd think would be obvious, that the alley is our artery, that the gate is the hinge, that the lock makes the hinge a wall. My mother signed hers with a pen I held steady. She wouldn't come. Pride has its own bench. She sent her cane with me, though. For luck, she said. And I didn't argue with superstition when it felt like a spine. We slid into a hallway with benches polished by worry. Priya spread our map on her lap like a picnic of proof. The recorded plat with the 6-foot stripe along the west boundary. Anna's stamped exhibit with neat blue lines and points that feel truer than most speeches. Photos of the brass grin. A photo of my mother's hand on the locked latch, the white seam of her knuckles like a sentence. The clerk called us at 10:42. Morales v. Willow View Homeowners Association. Temporary restraining order. The words were both exactly right and a little surreal. Inside, the judge's bench rose like a stage built for quiet. She had a stack of sticky notes and a mug that said, "World's Okayest Runner." I liked her instantly. Priya opened with a rhythm that had room for breath. Your Honor, this is not abstract. It's a locked gate on a recorded ingress-egress easement. My client's lot is burdened and benefited by a 6-foot right-of-way to the alley. The association placed a chain and lock across that easement and now offers a key as a reasonable restriction. It is not, and a pertinent easement cannot be materially obstructed. And in this case, the lock also violates the Fair Housing Act because Mr. Morales' mother uses the direct path to the alley due to mobility limitations. The steep front steps are not accessible. We've asked for a reasonable accommodation, remove the lock or install a gate that opens freely from the lot side. The association refused. Ms. Rourke stood for the HOA, all measured sympathy and polished edges. Your Honor, the board responded to a rash of trespasses and thefts. Locking common gates protects residents. We offered keys to affected owners. Security is a legitimate interest, and the HOA has authority to regulate common areas. The plaintiff's convenience does not outweigh community safety. The judge held up a hand. Let's get clear on the baseline, she said. Do you dispute the existence and location of a recorded ingress-egress easement along the plaintiff's west boundary to the alley? Ms. Rourke's eyes flicked to the plat, then back. We do not, Your Honor. And do you dispute that the present chain and padlock prevent the plaintiff from using the gate unless he obtains a key from the association and pays a deposit? We have offered keys to all affected owners, she said. That is a reasonable restriction. Priya leaned in. Your Honor, a lock administered at the whim of the servient estate is per se a material interference. My client's right isn't a favor. It runs with the land. The judge turned the plat until the blue band faced her like a river. I grew up in a town with alleys, she said almost absently. They are arteries. She looked at me. Mr. Morales, can you tell me briefly the grade at your front entry? Steep, I said. I don't know the number. I know it takes my mother 3 rests. Her doctor can write it. The alley is how we live. She nodded, flicked to another sticky note. All right, the standard. Likelihood of success on the merits, irreparable harm, balance of equities, and public interest. On the easement claim, the plaintiff is likely to succeed. The recorded documents are clear. A padlock is an obstruction. On the fair housing accommodation request, the plaintiff also shows likelihood, denying an accessible route when one exists, and insisting on a steep alternative is not reasonable. She set the mug down gently. Irreparable harm? Yes. When access to one's home is blocked, money doesn't fix the bruises of stairs. Balance of equities? The HOA can pursue security in ways that don't chain a right-of-way. Public interest, accessibility, and the integrity of recorded rights both qualify. She signed with a pen that made a soft, efficient sound. Temporary restraining order granted. The association is ordered to remove the chain and padlock immediately. If the HOA insists on a gate for security, any locking mechanism must permit free egress from the lot side without keys or codes, a lever latch, panic bar, or similar. No deposit, no application, no delay. Provide a code, if any, to Mr. Morales' household today. Do not relock this gate pending further order. Preliminary injunction hearing set 2 weeks from today. Counsel, confer on a reasonable accommodation protocol and report back in 7 days. The bailiff stamped the order. The stamps thump. Felt like a door unlocking somewhere inside my ribs. Priya squeezed my arm once. "Breathe," she said. I didn't realize I'd been holding it. In the hall, Dale hovered as if he'd been hoping for a softer ending. Scott stood behind him, the kind of crossed arms you wear when your certainty feels its first crack. "We'll comply," Dale said, and for the first time it didn't sound like a script. Ms. Rourke nodded, professional to the end. "We'll be in touch about design," she said. "We do need to address security." Priya offered a practical smile. "You can secure what's yours. You can't chain what's his." I carried the order home like a fragile thing and set it on the table next to my father's old tape measure. Mia came in from school, dropped her backpack, and peered at the seal. "Is that the paper that talks louder than locks?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Want to hear it?" We walked to the gate together. I read the key lines aloud. The chain hung there, suddenly shy. For the first time since this started, I put my fingers on the latch and felt possibility instead of brass. They came with bolt cutters at noon, 3 men in safety vests, and that particular silence people wear when they're about to undo a mistake. Dale stood behind them with the TRO in a plastic sleeve like a permission slip from a stricter parent. The biggest of the 3 positioned the cutters on the brass grin, squeezed, and the lock popped with a dull, surprised sound. He caught it in his palm the way you catch a dropped egg. Reflex, apology, the chain slithered to the ground with a sigh it hadn't earned. "Per the order," Dale said, voice low. "We'll get a compliant latch installed this week." My mother was already at the sliding door. "Move," she said gently, and I did. She took her time, she always does. But when her hand reached the cedar, there wasn't a barrier asking who she was. Just wood, hinge, sky. She pressed the old latch and the gate swung open like it remembered us. The alley lay there, ordinary and bright. She stepped through, paused on the threshold as if counting angels, and then smiled with her whole face. "There," she said to the day. "That's how it's supposed to be." Mia slipped past me, the wind of her joy catching the loose hairs at my neck. She danced the 6-foot band Anna had painted with numbers, like hopscotch for rights. "We won," she whispered, like a secret that wanted to be loud. Priya called from her office. "Orders served?" she asked. When I said yes, I could hear the small exhale travel the miles. "Good. Now we make it permanent. I'll draft the accommodation agreement and a consent order for the preliminary injunction. We'll require free egress without keys from the lot side, a self-closing hinge, any lock or keypad on the alley side only, no deposits, no forms beyond a simple notice, and a policy change so this never happens again. Also, lighting and cameras as alternative security." That afternoon, a locksmith arrived with a catalog of metal. He ran his fingers over the cedar like a tailor measuring a shoulder. "You want a lever that opens with one motion?" he said, more to the gate than to me. "No keys on this side. We'll put a keypad on the alley. Code to you and anyone else who needs it, changes quarterly. Closer at the top so it doesn't slam. I'll mount the latch at 36 inches so your mom doesn't have to reach. Smooth strike so it won't catch her cane." He looked up and held my gaze for a beat. "My grandmother used to call these get-out-fast latches," he added, and that sealed it. Anna returned just before dusk, the alley throwing long shadows like careful handwriting. She checked her caps, her blue dashes, then took 2 photos. One with the chain in a coil by the trash bin, one with my mother's hand on the new lever that hadn't been installed yet, but whose space we'd taped off like a promise. "Lines should end in something that works," she said, "not just a point on a paper." She handed me a folded copy of her final exhibit, edges creased from the day. "Put this in the folder with your deed. Take it out once in a while. People forget. The ground doesn't." The board scheduled a working session 2 days later. This time, the room didn't buzz with heat. It buzzed with attention. Ms. Rourke spoke first, measured. "We're here to comply and to craft a policy that addresses both access and security." Priya slid a draft across the table, its title almost tender. Reasonable Accommodation and Recorded Easement Access Protocol. It read like sense. Gates across recorded rights-of-way must allow free egress from the dominant estate without keys or codes. When codes are used on the common side, they must be provided same day to affected residents. No deposits, no paperwork walls disguised as forms, a 24-hour repair clock if latches fail. Lighting, cameras, and patrols as first tools for security, not chains. Neighbors spoke, and the room practiced listening. Mrs. Alvarez rolled forward and tapped her scooter basket. "This is my minivan," she said. "Don't park it on a hill and tell me to be happy." Laughter broke something stiff and made it easier to bend. Scott cleared his throat and stood, hands flat on the table. "We had thefts," he said, and his voice lost some of its armor. "We reacted. We should have read the plat before we bought padlocks." He looked at me, not past me. "I'm sorry. It's a small sentence. It did a big thing in the room." The motion passed. Unanimous. This time, policy adopted, latch approved, lighting for the alley entrances. The word accommodation stopped sounding like a concession and started sounding like the shape care takes when it remembers law. The locksmith returned with the hardware, the lever soft under my fingers, the closer whispering the gate shut, with a dignity the chain never had. He set the keypad on the alley side, programmed the code, and printed it on a slip of paper like a recipe. Dale stuck the number in an email and sent it within the hour. No deposit. No, "we'll see." Just a code, 4 digits that meant today, not tomorrow. After dinner, I stood in the threshold and listened to the hinge. Metal on metal can be a rude sound. This wasn't. It was a low, satisfied note, the sound a house makes when it knows you're home. Mia brought me her new drawing. Same brown gate, but open now, blue swaths of crayon pouring through it like sky turned liquid. My mother tapped the lever once, twice, testing, then nodded as if approving a recipe. "It remembers," she said. "What a hinge is for." On the counter, the old padlock lay where I'd set it after the crew left, heavy, ridiculous. I didn't throw it away. I labeled it in thin, black letters and tucked it beside the deed. Not a trophy, a reminder, a thing that tried to make us small, kept now to scale. Outside, the alley breathed. Somewhere, a dog barked. The gate swung and swung back, unafraid of its job. Tomorrow, we'd still have the hearing. Tonight, we had a way in and out that didn't ask permission. And that, in a life made of small logistics that mean everything, felt like the first chapter closing the right way. 2 weeks is a long time when your life measures itself at a gate. In that span, the new lever learned our hands. The closer whispered shut without scolding. The keypad on the alley side blinked its 4 digits like a polite doorman who knew our name but didn't tell stories. Lights went up at the alley entrances, soft amber halos that made the night feel seen. Mrs. Alvarez rolled through with a laugh that had been missing for months. Delivery drivers discovered the path again and blessed us under their breath. We slept. When the hearing finally came, the courthouse felt less like a gauntlet and more like a place where paper remembers. Priya carried a slim binder that had grown heavier in meaning. Ms. Rourke brought one too, thinner than before and full of "we propose to stipulate." The judge listened, her sticky notes an orchard of yellow. Then she did what good judges do, turned a temporary fix into something with teeth. "On consent," she said, pen poised. "The court enters a preliminary injunction as to Lot 27's west boundary egress easement. The association shall not obstruct, impede, or condition access by keys, deposits, or applications. Any gate at that easement must permit free egress from the lot side at all times. The HOA will adopt and publish an accommodation policy consistent with this order within 14 days. The parties will file a stipulated permanent injunction upon completion of policy implementation. The stamp thumped. The sound still hit me like air. In the hall, Dale tucked a hair behind his ear, a nervous tick I hadn't noticed until it was gentled by relief. "We'll record a notice," he said, almost eager, "so future boards don't forget." Scott stood beside him, hands open. "We didn't read the map," he said. "We will now." I believed him, not because of the words, but because of how tired they looked of being the wrong kind of certain. Recording day felt like a small pilgrimage. The county's counter gleamed under fluorescent lights. I slid across the stipulated order and the HOA's easement access protocol, Priya's language braided into it. The clerk stamped, scanned, and handed me 2 instrument numbers that felt like coordinates to a better version of us. They would live beside the deed in a manila folder that had become, almost despite itself, a family album. The title policy, the plat, Anna's blue-dashed exhibit, a photo of my mother's hand. On the new lever like a blessing. Anna came by that evening, a plumb bob in her palm. "For Mia," she said, "every good line drops from something that knows where down is." Mia held the brass weight like treasure. Anna walked the fence one more time, checking caps, squinting at Lath the wind had worried, and then knelt to show Mia how a bubble tells a truth without raising its voice. "We keep it honest," she said, and the old phrase stitched cleanly to my father's memory in a way that closed a circle I hadn't realized was open. The board's working session the week after was boring in the best way. They argued about hinge models and the angle of lights so they didn't glare into bedrooms. They adopted Priya's policy almost word for word and added a phone number you could call at midnight that didn't roll to voicemail. A neighbor I'd only waved at before brought snickerdoodles. Scott apologized again, this time to the room, the kind of public ownership that makes private forgiveness possible. Mrs. Alvarez wheeled up and pointed to the laminated residence access sign Dale had zip-tied by the gate. "Change the tone of that," she said, grinning. "We are residents. No need to remind us?" Dale laughed and promised a new one. He kept it. Life, which had paused and held its breath, exhaled. The alley turned back into a hallway we shared. Kids chalked. Constellations no astronomer could prove. The mail carrier learned the code and stopped huffing up the hill. On good days, my mother used the lever with a flourish. On bad days, with a steadying breath. Both were victories. Priya sent a closing email. Consent order entered. Case. Dismissed without prejudice by stipulation. Call me if anyone forgets. The title company sent a quiet letter that said, in effect, "We were ready if you needed us." I filed both under proof the world can work. I kept the old padlock on a shelf above the folder, labeled in thin black letters like a museum tag. The IZ Day. We remembered the map. Sometimes I take it down and set it in Mia's palm, just long enough to feel how heavy small things are when we let them rule us. Then I put it back, and we walk to the gate. She pushes the lever, and the cedar swings open on a hinge that remembers what it's for. The code we keep isn't just 4 digits on a keypad. It's the promise we make to each other, that rights aren't favors, that care isn't charity, that lines, when honest, don't divide us. They teach us how to meet. A $12 padlock tried to erase 30 years of footsteps. It didn't. We wrote them deeper. If this story helped, subscribe to HOA USA Stories, tap like, leave a comment, and share it to reach more neighbors across the U.S.